Hello fellow gamers, I'm going to review Killzone Shadowfall, which is Killzone 4, for the PS4. I'm going to specifically review the online multiplayer. I bought this game at the launch of the PS4. Over the years, I've logged 7,000 matches, so I have a lot to say about this game. I'm going to share with you what the scene is like today when you go to log in, and what the community is like. I'm going to share with you the good things and the bad things about the game, and I'm going to show you a couple of bizarre glitches that I encountered during this recording. And finally, I'm going to make a recommendation as to whether you should bother playing this game or not. First, I want to address the single-player campaign mission. I did play it during the launch of the game, and it did a really good job of showing the graphics, but overall, I thought it was an average game. I did try to play through it again recently for this review, and I was actually pretty bored. To me, the core of the game is the online multiplayer. The rest of the internet disagrees with me, though. When they do a review of the game, they are mostly talking about the single-player campaign. So if you want to know more about the campaign mission, just look at some of those other reviews. So in the multiplayer, there can be up to 24 players divided into two teams of 12. There are still people playing in 2020. There's normally one full game at any given moment, plus one or two smaller games with just a few people in them. Deathmatch is the most popular game. Basically, that's just where the two teams try to get the most kills. The next most popular mode is Warzone, and that's just basically a collection of smaller missions that each team has to do, such as capture the flag or plant a bomb on a target. Sometimes you can find people playing that mode, but it used to be played a lot more in the past. There's also a mode called Domination, which involves a lot of bots, and for some reason it doesn't work anymore. So I'm just going to jump into the pluses and minuses of the game. One big plus. Killzone is like a game of chess compared to other first-person shooters. And one of the big reasons is because of the gadgets in the game. There are so many of them depending on what class you're using and what loadout you're using. Here's some examples. There's a little radar beacon that you can plant that highlights the enemy players for your team. There's also automated drones that you can throw up into the sky, and you can have some that follow you around. There's some that stay in one place. There's also turrets you can lay down, which is basically like an automated machine gun. When someone steps in front of it, they get shot. There's also this pulsar device that you can set that destroys enemy gadgets. The most important and most strategic thing is the spawn beacon. It sets a place where your team respawns after they die, and you really have to think about where to place it. You kind of want to hide it in a corner somewhere where the other team can't find it because they can destroy it. You also don't want the enemy to be camping out around it and shooting people as they spawn into the game. The most important function of the spawn beacon, though, is to open up another front on the enemy. If you can get a spawn beacon behind the enemy lines, then you can crush them with a second front from behind. Not everyone in the game is a big fan of the automated turrets and drones. Some people think it takes away from the skill side of the game. Instead of one-on-one shooting, you're depending on some machines that you place down and run away from, basically. There is some merit to that, but I will say once you start using them, you'll realize how fun they are to use. A lot of the gadgets can only be used by certain classes, and there's 4 classes in the game. There's Scout, which is the sniper class. There's support, which is basically like a medic who can also set the spawn beacons. There's assault, which is a very well-balanced soldier who's meant to fight on the front lines. And then there's insurgent, and insurgent is someone who sneaks around hacking enemy equipment to bring it under the control of their team. And they can also walk up to dead bodies and steal the abilities of the deceased. A big minus is that the game has lag, and there's lag for certain players and not for others, which is something I've never really experienced in a first-person shooter, at least not to this extreme. There's certain players who can shoot you before you even see the animation of them shooting you. It could be because there's a lot of different countries playing on the same server. There's some days where it doesn't seem to happen at all, and then there's other days where it's really bad. So obviously that could be very frustrating when the other players have an advantage. And this actually creates a lot of friction in the game, and there's a lot of people who get on the mics and complain about it. And when they see one of these, quote, fast players, they are often called a cheater or a lagger or whatever. The gadgets and stuff that I mentioned before, they do kind of nullify this advantage, because even if they can shoot you pretty quickly, they may not be a match for your automated drone. Sometimes the game can experience some overall lag that seems to affect everyone, and that was especially so in the early days of this game after launch. The game was very buggy. Sometimes there would be a 7-second delay from where you actually shoot somebody and the game registers your kill. They lost a lot of the player base during those early days because of that lag. There's still some glitches in the game. For example, there's this guy up here at the top of the stairs who will not go down no matter how much I shoot him. Then his dead body comes down from the ceiling somehow. When I slow it down, I realize it actually goes up and then comes back down. And here's a really bizarre glitch. It's what I call bubblegum acid. Another plus in the game is that it's a game of death, and I like this aspect of it. Let me explain. You die a lot and you respawn a lot. If you're in a full game, the respawns happen quite quickly. In a typical team deathmatch, there will be over 300 deaths. Each time you respawn, you get a grenade. Theoretically, there could be 300 grenades thrown in one game, which is just crazy. People are just dying left and right. I used to play old games in the Warzone mode, where there could be over 500 deaths. It's not just the grenades though, it's all those gadgets, and there's trip mines and other things just all over the place. Unless you're playing as Scout, your average lifespan in the game is only going to be 1 minute. Some people might see this as a drawback, but I'm telling you, I think it's plain simple fun, and I think it's hilarious. It's just a lot of chaos. That's another thing that negates the lag advantage I mentioned a minute ago. There's just so many different ways to die. Even if you have a lag advantage, your time's going to come. I mentioned that you respawn a lot. That brings up a big minus. There are 2 base camps, one for the enemy and one for you, and that's where everyone spawns. This goes against what other first-person shooters do, where it just spawns you in various areas on the same map. And if conditions are right, the enemy can push you into your own base, and you can't get out of it. And this is something that used to happen a lot more in the past, but it doesn't happen as much anymore because people have learned ways to get out of a base. The number one way is to plant a bunch of spawn beacons throughout the map. But there are a lot of noobs that enter the game and they always spawn at the base and they run right for the door and they just get killed right at the door. The enemy cannot come into the base, but they can surround all the doors with not only their whole team, but also their automated gadgets. Very experienced players will know that you can actually teleport out of the base if you pick a certain loadout. Time for another plus, and that is there's a lot of cool people that play this game. There's not that many screaming kids as there are in other first-person shooters. It's mainly an older crowd. Some of these people are veterans of the entire Killzone series. I've seen the same people on there for years and years and years. I've mentioned how I have 7,000 matches in, but there's some players I run into that have 20,000 and even 30,000, and that's some dedication. About 80% of the people I'm friends with on the PS4 network are people I met in Killzone. Some of them don't even speak my language. I mentioned that this game is played by a lot of different people from a lot of different countries. And it's very casual. The game is just not that serious. You occasionally get some grouchy people who complain about the lag, but for the most part, it's a very laid-back atmosphere. They aren't going to care if you lose the game for them because they already have played 20,000 games, so it doesn't matter. Most of them are there just to have a good time. Leave a comment if you've ever played with me before, and tell me what you think about the fan base. I used to go by the screen name Orion, but now I go by I'm over 40, so F you. Time for another minus, and that's the physics. As you move around, you feel stiff and heavy compared to other first-person shooters. Going from this to playing TitanFall is like going from 5 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour. And by the way, I have reviewed TitanFall 2, so I'll leave a link in the description. You're just not that nimble in this game. The sliding is kind of awkward, and you can't lean around a corner like you can in Rainbow Six Siege and other games. Time for another plus, and that's the leveling system. The more you use your gadgets, the stronger they become. And your overall rank is based on challenges, and there's over 2,600 challenges in the game. I have achieved 91% of them, and that 91% is actually one of the largest percentages of any player in the game. I'm not trying to brag, I'm just trying to point out you'll never see a person that has achieved 100% of all the challenges. Like for me, I still need to get a kill streak of 25 and a kill streak of 30 to add 2 more completed challenges to my list. These challenges incentivize you to keep playing. And now for another minus, and this one is a big pet peeve of mine. After every match, the players who are staying on to play the next game get to pick the next map. They have a habit of picking the same maps over and over again. Now, every map in this game is gorgeous. There's some rare ones that hardly ever get picked, so you never get to see them. People love the park and they love the penthouse, but they hardly ever pick the statue or the terminal. I wish the maps would have been determined at random instead of having people vote on them. Now for another plus, the developers gave the game a little bit of love before they abandoned it. When the game came out, it was very unbalanced. There were certain weapons that were a lot more powerful than others. But the developers ironed those problems out, and they created quite a few maps. They basically supported the game for about a year after launch. I wish they would have stayed on and did more. Now for a big minus that kind of relates to that. This game killed the entire franchise. It did sell over 2 million copies, which makes it the 22nd best selling of all time. But that 2 million is after many, many years. When it came out at launch, it had to compete with Call of Duty Ghosts and Battlefield 4, which I think both were a lot more popular than this game. I think a lot of people got bad first impressions also because the game was very buggy and laggy at launch. So a lot of people tried it and then they just moved over to Call of Duty or Battlefield. The developers went on to create Horizon Zero Dawn, which sold 10 million. That's 5 times as much. So I don't see any potential for them to create a new Killzone game. I hope I'm wrong though. This game just never lived up to its full potential. Now for one last plus, and it's a big one. The game is dirt cheap. You can download it for $10 on the PlayStation Network, and sometimes you'll catch it on sale. If you buy it used, you can get it for $7. Whichever way you buy it, just make sure you go out and download the extra multiplayer maps that are free. From what I can tell, they don't come with the core game. And there's also an Intercept pack for $10, and I recommend you skip that. That's basically a online co-op mode, and from what I can see, no one plays it. There's also an Insurgent pack for $10, which lets you use the Insurgent class. If you end up playing the game a lot and you like it, I do recommend you pay for that pack. I'll also mention that this game does play on the PS5, but I haven't heard too much about it yet. I have heard that they increased the frame rate, but I'm not sure if that just applies to the campaign mode or the multiplayer mode. If you've experienced this game on the PS5, please let me know how it plays. So finally, I need to make a recommendation here. I think due to the price and all the pluses that I mentioned, that everyone out there watching this who plays first-person shooters should purchase this game and play it. I think you'll enjoy the carnage and the amount of gadgets that you use. It's a great game to play after a long, hard day at work. Even though it's like a game of chess, you really don't have to think that hard about it. I hope they keep the servers open for a long time, and hopefully I see you out there. So I hope you enjoyed the review. May your games make you happy and smart, and may people respect you for playing them. So long, everyone.